How you doing, guys? It is Scanner here. Today's video is going to be about how to feel useful in sorties when you first get access to them. After you've finished a War Within story quest, you will have access to the daily sorties, which are anywhere from level 60 to level 100 missions. You do 3 of them in sequence and you get a reward from the sortie reward table. That can include things like Kuva for rolling your ribbons, or endo, or sculptures, or ribbons themselves, or legendary cores, or all kinds of shit. So it can be a bit of a shock when people first arrive into sorties out of the War Within, because it's quite the jump up in difficulty. The enemies tend to eat damage, they tend to do a lot of damage. You can't really slip up for a second. You see there, we're doing an excavation mission and the Frost let the old shield go down, and that was it. It was done. He wasn't paying any attention to what was happening. So it just, you know, it's not like the worst thing in the world, but it makes things just a little bit longer. And what you want to do in sorties is you want to feel like you're helping. That's certainly the biggest issue I can sense for people who, the first time I might bring them into sorties after they finish the War Within, it's just such a big step up and they don't feel helpful, and you don't enjoy a process when you don't feel helpful. So this video is basically going to be about that. People who are well able to run sorties, you're not going to get anything from this video. But if you have some helpful advice for people, drop it down in the comments, share with your community, etc. And what I'm going to focus on today for people who are coming into sorties straight out of, you know, the War Within is utility. It's one of the most helpful, useful things in the game. Quite frankly, it's unlikely you're going to be equipped to the point where you're doing heavy duty damage up on level 100 stuff. It's just not really very likely. That takes the right kind of weapons with the right kind of builds and the right kinds of mods and formas in all the right places, etc. So what you should maybe focus on is stuff like utility and thinking carefully about the mission that you have to do, the conditions that those missions have, because all the sortie missions have different conditions, and how you can help out in those circumstances. Now, I can chunk out damage at level 100, there's no problem with that. The thing is, there's plenty of other people that are going to be in my groups who can chunk out plenty of damage. And pretty much, I've never played a sortie where there weren't 2 guys in there who were just super powerful. And that's fantastic, obviously, especially when you're starting new, but you still have that feeling of, I kind of wish I could help out, I don't like being carried. And utility is the absolute way to go. So in this, we have a Frost, huge utility with the shields protecting the excavators, which is obviously very, very nice. I myself, even though I can do plenty of damage at level 100, I still quite like to run things like Limbo and Rhino in the sorties for one reason and one reason only, and that is reviving other people. Some of these missions ain't easy, and when somebody's down, somebody else has to revive them, so you're missing about 50% of your DPS at any given moment. There can also be things like radiation hazards, which will just absolutely boot people repeatedly, and people will be going down all the time. Having somebody who can commit to reviving and do so safely, Rhino because of the iron skin, Limbo because he can sidestep and revive and not risk taking any damage, is a fantastic thing. Especially on some of the boss fights. It can be hugely important because bosses hit intensely hard at level 100. So thinking about what the challenge of the mission is and thinking about what would be a good frame to bring in is vital if you're, you know, just starting out. Maybe you're worried about constantly being down, take in something like the Rhino who's super tanky. Maybe it's a spy mission, obviously take in something with good stealth. If you're doing a spy mission and you're not comfortable doing a room, just say in chat. I see this all the time, where people might mess up a room and then somebody gets mad at them, etc. I've rarely, if ever, seen somebody, well, no, I've seen one guy get mad because he was the tool when somebody said, I just can't do this room, can somebody else do it? If you're doing something like a mobile defense, why not bring something like a slow Nova who can, you know, max out for distance? And I've seen this happen so many times. The second I see a Nova in my mobile defense groups. I'm so happy because you run to the point, you put it in, the Nova will ult a couple of times, and nothing will ever actually reach you. There won't actually be anything to kill because it'll be moving so slowly from such a great distance away that it can never actually reach the objective. There's all kinds of ways to make your life a little bit easier and a little bit more fulfilling when you're doing sorties, instead of just spending a couple of weeks getting carried to the end screen and then finally getting the levels or the weapons or the experience to just know how to chuck out a lot of damage in these things. So really, sorties change the game. The rules can be actually quite different. A good example here is spy missions. On spy missions, if you mess up a room, that's it, it's over. You have to get all 3 rooms perfectly. You've got a far more limited amount of time to get through those rooms. There's a lot to learn, and there's a lot to pay attention to, and there's a lot to adapt to basically on a sortie. I mean, in the raid, the Law of Retribution raid, you can use ciphers. In the sorties you can't, so technically the sorties are that little bit harder than the raid because of that. So always think utility. Always think, if you don't have the damage, if you're new to the sorties, always think, what can I actually do that's going to be super helpful on this type of mission? Maybe it boils down to something as simple as you don't actually have, because some people do hit the War Within with surprisingly few frames available and surprisingly few weapons available. So maybe it's as simple as you went Zenuric for your focus, so you can spam that little bubble and help everybody else keep their energy up. There's all kinds of ways that you can help out and you can feel useful and you can enjoy the experience a little bit more than just standing there putting 100 bullets into something and it not dying ever. Because some of these modifiers can be insane. There can be an armor modifier, there can be a shield modifier where enemies have vastly increased armor and shields, etc. Rad Hazard will absolutely nuke you. You can find yourself running with severely limited energy. There's all kinds of stuff that can happen that might interfere with the way that you are actually used to playing the game. So you got to open up your mind a little bit and be open to possibilities and ways of playing that maybe you haven't really thought about or needed to engage with before, because up until now whatever we're doing has always been able to carry you through the challenges. So if you're new, if you're looking at the War Within and you're thinking, wow, after this I get to do sorties and I get access to Rivens, and it's not going to be necessarily easy, but there are certainly ways that you can go about having a positive impact on the game for your teammates instead of just getting carried along and feeling kind of bored and inadequate, which nobody wants to feel that way basically when they're playing a game that they enjoy. So main take home message here, think about utility. Think about what you can do that helps outside of just chunking out damage, which frankly is something that you might not be able to do when you first get into the sorties. So that's it for this video, guys. Thanks very much for watching. Hope you're having a great day and all the best.